Jose Mourinho is no longer the manager of Roma. He was sacked early Tuesday morning by the owners, the Friedkin family. How did we get here? Well, I think the main thing is that this wasn't necessarily fans calling for his head. He still enjoyed the support of certainly the match-going public, although sentiment towards him had cooled a little bit on sports radio call-ins and social media. I think primarily it's a business decision. And the Friedkins are running a business. In the first 2 years that they owned the club, they lost something like 400 million euros, the bulk of that in Mourinho's first season when they spent big. They ended up with and still have the third highest wage bill in Serie A. And the results simply haven't been there. They're currently 9th in the table. This is after 2 seasons in which they finished 6th in Mourinho's first 2 campaigns. They obviously, they won the Europa Conference League, reached the Europa League final in their second season. They're still in the Europa League this year. They have a playoff with Feyenoord coming up. But the Friedkins, I think, realized that, hey, maybe this isn't quite sustainable going forward, because obviously the big money is in the Champions League. That's where you get your prize money, and that's where you can charge more and sign better commercial deals. This is the reason why when Mourinho wanted to extend his contract, or open discussions to extend his contract months ago, the club said, well, wait a minute, why don't we say where we are at the end of the season in June when the 3-year deal he signed comes to an end. And I think that was kind of an indication from their part that they weren't necessarily willing to commit unless it looked like they could finish top 4. Now, they still are only 5 points back, but the truth is that since Christmas, they've only beaten one team, and that was Cremonese in a comeback in the Coppa Italia. And Cremonese, of course, are a Serie B side. The other reality of this is that in Serie A, which is ultimately where clubs make the bulk of their revenue, among managers who have managed at least 50 games, Mourinho has the lowest points per match ratio of any manager since 1993. And, you know, those numbers, the Friedkins, it didn't fill them with faith for the future. And having a squad that's mostly filled with older players, with free agents, this again, partly down to Mourinho's choices and partly down to the financial fair play restrictions that the club are under. This prompted them to say, hey, we need to go in a different direction. And I think by making the change now, they figure they give themselves maybe a fighting chance of closing that 5-point gap with 4th place, qualifying for the Champions League next year. Champions League, which, by the way, next year could have 5 Serie A clubs in it under the new Swiss model format, so maybe they only need to rise to 5th place. Of course, there's also the possibility of winning the Europa League as well. They didn't want to find themselves, perhaps, if you want to be cynical, in a situation either where they get to the end of the season, Mourinho's won the Europa League, and then he can kind of hold them to ransom with a new deal, with assurances for more spending or whatever else. And so I think that is what prompted them to act now rather than stick with the original plan, which was to wait until the end of the campaign. Mourinho undoubtedly will leave an important legacy in the sense that the Europa Conference League trophy was Roma's first European trophy in more than half a century. He certainly struck a chord with a lot of fans at the club, sold out the Stadio Olimpico, which is something that hadn't happened in a while. At the same time, and on the flip side, he also fell out with a number of players, got himself sent off 7 times in 2.5 seasons, and perhaps kind of played almost like a stereotypically Mourinho-esque brand of football, which is out of step, let's say, from the type of football that the most European clubs play, certainly the ones at the top, but also ones further down. And ultimately, I think the Friedkins knew that it was unlikely that he would continue after June anyway, or that they would want him to continue, and so best to make a clean break now.